my goodness, I have the wrong overlay. I didn't turn on my camera software. Can you tell I haven't done a show in like 2 weeks? Nothing is ready. Hello, everyone. My name is Cameron Cowan. This is what is the show? The Cameron Journal Newshour. That's it. Oh my goodness. Happy New Year, everyone. Actually, I needed that overlay because it said Happy New Year. It's the wrong color for this show. That's my other show. But it is Happy New Year to everybody. Um I'm so happy to see you and hear you, and I just really appreciate everyone coming back here. Thank you so much for being here. Our last show was on December 22nd, and I took off for the holiday. And so, yeah, it's been what? 8 day, 9, almost 2 weeks since we've been together, which is why my software wasn't on, and I almost forgot to put on makeup, and I didn't even do an event for this show. Oh, well. Welcome, everyone. This is the Cameron Journal Newshour. My name is Cameron Cowan. Make sure to follow me online on all your favorite social media platforms. If you want the Saturday newsletter, which also has been off, there'll be one this Saturday. Make sure to subscribe at cameronjournal.substack.com or cameronjournal.com/subscribe. Either page will get you to where you need to go. You can subscribe for free, get the newsletter. If you want to join my Discord, private events, all this stuff, become a member of Cameron Journal Plus. There's also 2 ways to do that. One is just upgrade your membership on Substack. You're in. If you go over to cameronjournal.com/subscribe, you can also sign up for Cameron Journal Plus there. It's $5 a month. It's so cheap for quality journalism, quality news, all this type of thing. There are big changes coming to the Cameron Journal in 2026. I started working on some of them today, including new content strategy, exciting new content on all the things I do. Writing, trends, business, public relations, all of this stuff. All of it's happening. It's all amazing. We're doing really great things, and so keep an eye out at cameronjournal.com for the latest new articles. And then obviously every Saturday there's a wrap-up, which is why you should subscribe to the newsletter, because then it all gets delivered to your inbox for you. See how that works? It's magical. We do magical things here. Also, my other show, The Living Joke, we did an 8-hour New Year's Eve stream for New Year's, rung in the new year. It was so amazing and awesome. We had so much fun. We were going to play Magic the Gathering. We only ended up playing video games the whole time. Rocket League, Fortnite, all this. We had a lot of fun. The guys were great. Will and Connor were great. Will was funny and dressed up. Connor was hilarious as always in his quiet one-liner bomblet way that we love from him, which just always brings me joy. So someone was editing some shorts for us the other day. He's kind of like, Connor has so many great one-liners. I'm like, you should see him in person. It's even crazier. So we had a lot of fun with that. The regular Living Joke Show will be back on Wednesday, 2 days from now, the 7th of January, rather. We'll be here, and we're going to be talking gaming, all types of stuff. So that's housekeeping sorted. Thank you all so much. But let's dive right into the headlines, because a lot has happened. I really need President Trump to stop doing things when I'm on break, because Venezuela's happening, Iran may be happening, and we're still trying to rehab 2025. So let's just dive straight into it. Let me do this. Let me change this. And we don't need you. And we don't need that until Wednesday. Those are the video boxes for the guys. I need a web browser. Here we go. All right. So I want to start before we get into all the Venezuela stuff, which is right. It's right here. We're going to get into Trump telling oil companies before he told the government. But I wanted to start with this, this rather prescient post from Fisher King, which Venezuela had not happened when he wrote this, and it now seems incredibly prescient. So it says here, this is the end of the first quarter of the 21st century. It started with the 9/11 attacks, spilled into the war on terror, then the 2008 financial crisis. Then we had Obama and the rise of woke. Now we're in the Trump age, the effort at undoing the decline of the USA, punctuated with COVID and the senile Biden presidency, which will be regarded as a shameful and retarded interlude. It has been a wild 25 years looking back on it. Consistent theme is government failure just about every step of the way. Massive increase in the national debt across all administrations, terrible foreign policy, agree, with the exception that Trump didn't do foreign wars mostly. That would turn out to not be true the next day after he wrote this. Massive foreign invasion of illegals and legal immigrants that make the country look and feel very different from even 2001, much less 1980. The positives in this area are all in the private sector. That's by design, by the way. We got the iPhone, Elon built Tesla and SpaceX, cryptocurrency emerged, AI is on the upswing. These positives are okay, but do not offset the government failures that have resulted in declining quality of life despite GDP increases. It's good to take stock over 25 years because most of us on here will be alive another 25 years, and if things go the way they've gone since 2000, it will be very ugly. Sorry to be a doomer, just being honest. I I think this is a very good look at 2025. There's an article from the New Yorker we may get to, but as you can tell, don't look at the tabs to the left, that's all work. The tabs to the right of the story. Um like I think this is for a relatively short post. This is a fairly good review. Like there's another article from the New Yorker we may get to. This is a fairly good review of 2025. It's tough to start 2026 with, you know, going in and capturing a foreign head of state and then bringing him to the U.S. on charges in a private plane. And then I also have the video of Trump parading him around in a truck in New York City like a Roman triumph. We'll talk about that. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting sort of view. The positives in this era are all in the private sector. That's actually by design. That I mean, I was watching, and I say this because I was watching with a friend the great Adam Smith documentary, The Century of the South, which was made in the late 90s, and it was talking about political changes and all this sort of thing. The whole point of reducing government capacity, getting government off your back, to quote Ronald Reagan, is that so that all the positives would be in the private sector. Government should be small and bumbling and not do very much, not accomplish very much, and all this type of thing. We're now living in that reality where people are homeless, we don't have affordable housing, healthcare is a disaster, all this type of thing, and but we can definitely go capture a head of state in the middle of the night. Welcome to 2026, everyone. And so it was just kind of an interesting, like, I feel like this is a very, I think, median opinion of people. Like, smartphones are nice, the internet became a thing, social media became a thing, but products feel worse, life feels worse, cars feel worse. That's one of the problems of living in an age of great disruption. And the reality is, we've been living in an age of great disruption for about 200 years, which in the time span of human history is yesterday, earlier today, really. Um, if you think about where we were 1,000 years ago, our age of disruption started in the 1750, practically this morning. But I think this is a very good evaluation of the last 25 years. As someone who was in middle school in 2000, I was 12. I was 13 when the 9/11 attacks happened. I was 20 when 2008 happened. He didn't mention the Great Recession, which I think is interesting. Because that, well, actually, he did. I'm sorry, he did at the top. Because that's really a big story of the 21st century. But yeah, I was 20 when 2008 happened, all this type of thing. I'm 38 this year. I will be 38 in 4 months ish, 3.5 months. In 25 years, I'll be what, 50? Well, no, I'll be 60. Yeah, because in 20 years, I'll be 58. And then plus 5 is 63. So in 25 years, I will be 63 years old, practically ready to retire and not take Social Security because it probably won't exist by then. But I mean, yes, it is a quite stark, thing that if and he's right. If the next 25 years are like the last 25, like my 40s and 50s are not going to be like, what will my life look like in my early 60s 25 years from now? That's a frightening thing to think about, but I do feel like this is the very median opinion. I feel like this opinion is also very online. changes in employment, the rise of the gig economy, all that type of thing didn't necessarily, make this. And I think a lot of people maybe are very sensitive to that. I think a lot of, the post 2000 offshoring, the arrival of NAFTA, CAFTA, the rise of China. I mean, China was a relative, up and coming, oh, we're going to really do it this time country in 2000. And now look at them. Huge turnaround in the last 25 years. A lot on this planet has changed. Travel's gotten cheaper. The world's gotten smaller. A lot has happened. I don't feel like most people feel like a lot of it's positive. And that's because of what he said at the very end. Declining quality of life. Anyway, let's not talk too long on this because we have a lot to cover. It's been a long 2 weeks. Speaking of China, this one I thought was interesting. There is this new phrase going around on Chinese social media about the economic vulnerability and systemic risk within American society, and they now call it what's roughly translated as the kill line, because a single shot can trigger rapid and potentially irreversible collapse. As the post says, the main difference between the U.S. and other countries, America's economy has no safety net, an extreme downside risk, where emergency expenses or credit changes can ruin lives. One wrong step and recovery becomes nearly impossible. Hence, kill line. That sense of precarity is one of the things that when I was interviewing for America's Lost Generation, someone sent me a book about wine for Christmas. When I was writing this guy, that came up in interviews with people over and over and over again. It was something that I think a lot of people just don't feel like their parents had. There was a room and margin for error. I mean, when you talk to some of the boomers, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I got divorced twice and, lost my first, but I bought another house and I got my cars back and I rebuilt. And anyone under 40 days kind of like, you divorced and lost your house and you are alive? You bought another house? You rebuilt? What are you even like, that's not a concept. There's a couple in here who sent in their interview, and I always remember this couple because they say, like, we have the house, we have the salary, we have the kids, we have the picket fence, we have the American dream, but we both know, either one of us, we are one health crisis away from losing it all, everything. Kill line. So anyway, it was an interesting trend on social media. It's interesting to get a look at your society from the outside, and and the Chinese kind of looking at us as rather uncivilized, but I think it shows, like, we have traded an incredibly dynamic economy that's very good at shoveling money in the pockets of the wealthy, instead of having a society that will catch you when you fall. And obviously it's hard to say we need more social safety net programs when the Tim Waltz scandal is breaking and you have this massive amount of scam and fraud and all this sort of thing. It's definitely hard to say, oh yeah, we need these things. But it's interesting that the Chinese kind of look to us and be kind of like, your society is not so great. Like, like, things happen to people, life happens, but any problem can literally be a death sentence. And that's what I think particularly is true, of the story that I was trying to tell about millennials in the book America's Lost Generation, is that this level of precarity is unique compared to a lot of other countries. Where there are programs, there's help, there's things you can do. In this country, it's a hodgepodge of poorly funded social programs and a lot of charity, and oftentimes needs go unmet and unaddressed. And go find a social worker if you want proof of that. Go talk to anybody who works with homeless, particularly people that are like have jobs and are homeless. Like, it's a disaster. So and the comments are quite funny. The top one from the original person ironically said, poor people deserve poverty. Also, poor people have it great in the US, the most propagandized people in the world. Um and that was, I thought, a rather interesting sort of thing. Instantly, they also did kill lines for Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Northern Western Europe, Japan, South Korea, China, Southern Europe, Southeast Asia, and Brazil. The amount of money, before you basically die, sort of thing. Yeah, it was an interesting thing. I thought I would stop by and talk about that, especially as a chance to plug the book. Let's talk about Venezuela. So, in case you've been living under a rock or simply do not know, um, on Friday night, Saturday morning, President Trump ordered U.S. troops to go to Caracas, Venezuela, do some minor bombing that I think is, I've read the latest death count was 40 people, kill 40 people, and literally kidnap, in the middle of the night on a roof, the leader of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, who came to power in 2013 after Hugo Chavez. And obviously, relations between U.S. and Venezuela have not been good for some time. I remember the Hugo Chavez years. They nationalized the oil companies, things went downhill from there. It's been sanctions, export controls, all this type of thing since then. We've been massing troops and ships around Venezuela, we've been stopping oil tankers, and now we're arresting its leader and taking him to New York. Tomorrow morning on the Cameron Journal, there will be a big explainer article on kind of the history of Venezuela, all this sort of thing. But a lot of this was kind of it was a surprise to some people, not to everyone, but a lot of the things, how it was done, is very interesting. Allies were not informed, Congress was not informed, nobody was informed. They just kind of did it, which also gets into another rumor I found about J.D. Vance and his foreign policy shop. But I want to run this video where Trump talks about notifying the oil companies before anybody else.
Before the operation took place,
yes,
did you maybe tip them off?
Before and after, and they want to go in, and they're going to do a great job for the people of Venezuela.
Yeah, so the question was, did you speak with the oil companies before the operation? He says before and after. And so it's, yeah. And obviously, the oil companies were informed about an active war before it happened. Congress was not. That, my friends, was an authoritarian regime run by oligarchs, looks like. That's a little bit far, but we don't live under the authorizations of military force or AUMFs that we used to. After 9/11, Congress basically gave the president war powers in everything but name. And they did this series of bills called Authorization of Use of Military Force, AUMF. And these were in place for a decade. It let the Bush administration basically do what they want to do. It let the Obama administration basically do what they want to do. They only got repealed under Trump 1, ironically by Republicans, who said, I think we should pull some of these, and and especially Trump was bringing Afghanistan to an end and all this sort of thing. And so we don't live under that now. So now it's a very different set of rules, because people will say, oh, but haven't we done this before? Yeah, different legal structure. I think there were a series of 3 or 4 AUMFs. I don't think any of them exist anymore. But yeah, it's still, from a gathering consensus perspective, none was done. Allies were not informed unless they had robust intelligence and knew it was going to happen. I'm sure Russia and China and the British would know, because they have robust intel operations. And Australia might also have known. And there was certainly no informing of the Congress, the American people, nothing. That's but it is an interesting. The only thing this is interesting is from a narrative perspective. It also gives you a little bit of insight into what Trump's priorities are, and it is definitely the oil, which is heavy and hard to refine, but that's a whole other conversation. The reason I run this clip, saying is that's a bit beyond, but I run this because you're going to see this clip. You're going to see it. You're going to hear it. You're going to get a lot of criticism from the left, from Democrats on this. You should be aware of it and know where it started from, because what do I always say? News is a narrative. That's why they call it a story. You have to, if you want to understand what's going on in the world and how it all fits together, you have to understand reality and narrative. I say this every week. Reality and narrative. I try to exist between these two things. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not, but we're trying. This is where this again, you're going to see this more. So just be aware. This is where it started. This is where it come from. In my view, this is not good in a Republican, small r Republican, small r d democracy, small r Republican, small d democracy, Republican democracy. This isn't a good thing for the executive to be doing. But again, it's not like we haven't been here before. Some of us were lived through the Bush years. Let's move on quickly. Oh, this is the video with Maduro getting paraded around New York City in a truck. Let me go back to the beginning. It's a very small video, but you can kind of see Maduro there in the back at the end. The doors are open, the sirens are on. And when I saw this post and it said most don't understand this is Donald Trump's first triumph, I, being a classicist a little bit, immediately understood what they meant by that. So if you don't know what a Roman triumph is, when a general in ancient Rome would return from a conquest to Rome, in the Republican period to turn over his command back to the Senate, in the imperial period to just flex, they would have triumphs. And what they would do is they'd parade through Rome, and they would parade in the loot that they'd gotten, which would include foreign leaders, tribal leaders, slaves they had collected, people, all this sort of thing. Sometimes a tribal leader would literally be put on a large gold plate and carried through Rome as a spoil sort of thing. And so this is a similar thing where it's like, oh, we've captured the other tribal leader. We're now going to parade him through America's largest city for everyone to see his humiliation. It's a humiliation ritual for the person captured. For the person doing the capturing, it is a demonstration of their strength and their vitality and their military prowess. And for the ancient Romans, the people whose might is right, was a huge occasion and a huge affair. It didn't necessarily happen that often. Very famous generals would rack up, many triumphs. They were usually lavish affairs. Food and drink were provided. The one thing Trump is missing from his triumph is there usually was someone standing behind the general in the chariot, whispering in his ear, "Mortuus est, you are mortal." Yeah, that's probably the one thing missing from this Roman triumph. We have comments here. Let's see. It says, well, so we have comments. I have heard rumors and past behavior might reinforce this. There are congressional leaks all the time. How many deals do you think would have been done rapidly, succession ultimately making the OP moot? Well, yeah. Congressional leaks definitely do happen. When you inform Congress on national security matters, it's not all of Congress. It's what's called the Gang of Nine. And it is the Speaker of the President, the President pro tempore of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, the majority leaders of both parties. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm forgetting someone. Oh, the chairmen of the House and Senate Intel committees. So when you inform Congress on something like that, you go to a SCIF, one of those secure rooms in the basement, and those are the 9 people that get informed. They're also gathered in case of a nuclear strike. It gets in the National Security Act of 1947, but that's who you inform Congress. We don't typically see leaks on those things. Not that it can't happen, and not that it, I think, might have happened if I went and looked to find an instance of it. It usually doesn't happen because those are classified meetings and briefings. Oftentimes, the Gang of Nine is only informed as something is happening or right before it happens. Obama was notorious for that, actually. He basically waited to the last second to tell Congress he was going to do anything. I think he told the Gang of Nine that they had gotten Osama bin Laden and the helicopters are already in the air. He kind of told them about a half hour before it happened. So yeah, that would be how that works. However, this comment is very important. I'm going to put it on screen. There's also this perception that we're at war and carpet bombing Venezuela, which is not true. The original bombings only killed 40 people, which is not the truth. Strategic strikes on military assets. I feel terrible if anyone innocent people are forced into it. Yeah, I mean, I obviously feel really bad for the 40 or so people that were killed. But one of the early things about Venezuela that came out is how actually comparatively little that we did, which got also into the rumor that Maduro had negotiated something with Trump and this was kind of agreed upon, which is why there hasn't been massive regime change or a huge invasion or whatever have you. But I mean, yes, the strikes were very limited. It was like 40 people were killed or injured. Obviously, that's terrible for them and their families, and we send our condolences to them. But this was not some big invasion war. We're not, the B-52s are not dropping 100,000 pounds of ordnance on Caracas right now. That is definitely not happening. This was a go in and capture, and Trump rightly so compares it to Panama in '89 when they picked up Manuel Noriega, who was the leader of Nicaragua for a while. In the '80s, and part of the whole Iran Contra thing. He was probably arrested to cover that up. That's a whole other show. Forget I said it. But the yeah, that it is a, as I said, this is not without precedent. Even, as recently as, I mean, '89 is the marquee example. There have been other examples in the intervening years. It isn't necessarily unheard of. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Again, Nicolas Maduro is an awful despot. You know, it's not the end of the world he's out of power. I mean, let's be honest here. No one's sad to see Maduro gone except Maduro. Venezuelans don't seem to mind that much. The controversy about this has much to do with how it was done, not that it was done. A lot of my colleagues in the Democratic Party are complaining that it happened at all. Okay, fair, but that doesn't matter because no one's sad to see this man go. It was like getting rid of Gaddafi in Libya. No one was sad they got rid of him either. Same thing with Saddam, Don't cry for me, Argentina. Well, don't cry for me, Iraq or Venezuela. I mean, a lot of these guys are so terrible, they're happy anyone has come in and gotten rid of them. Obviously, there's a huge opportunity for Venezuela to finally be out from under the thumb of the Chavez Maduro regime. There's an opportunity here to do something new and different. They've sworn in a new president. Things are moving forward. It's very obvious that President Trump wants to secure Venezuela's oil reserves for American oil companies so that we can also have, more reserves in, throughout, in our home continent of North and South, our home area of North and South America, which also gets into the coming multipolarity geopolitical environment article coming out tomorrow morning where I discuss all of those things in depth. But yeah, the reactions to all of this are getting really crazy. It's important to stay grounded and understand what happened and understand a lot of people's issue. And the issue I sort of have with it, but not really, is how it happened, not that it happened. Again, Maduro's a terrible guy. The world's better with him out of power, sort of thing. Yeah, so I mean, and I saw a post this morning on Twitter that someone was saying, like, Democrats say good that Maduro was out but bad at how it was done, and I immediately retweeted and agreed with it to be kind of like, yeah, Maduro was awful and good riddance. But the how definitely is not great. Parading him through the streets is very Romanesque. I don't really have an opinion on that. It's tacky, but that's kind of what Trump does. It's fine. I do I have another thing on Venezuela? Oh no, we're getting into Israel. Okay. So we're kind of starting to get into some of the things that happened over the break. So kind of breaking away from Venezuela, which is good because we're at the half hour. I try to front load whenever I can. But yeah, so that's the situation in Venezuela. We're gonna see what happens with the oil. Like I said, head over to CameronJournal.com tomorrow. I have a huge explainer article coming out tomorrow morning. So that goes over history, our history in Latin America, some of the issues and problems of Venezuela, and most importantly, where we go from here now that this has happened. And it also gets into multipolarity and how it's very obvious we're trying to secure and lock down North and South America, the Don Roe doctrine. You're going to see that phrase come out about, trying to, which gets into Monroe and wanting to push Europe out of the New World, which we successfully did, and for European powers to stay the hell out of messing with our neck of the woods. It's very obvious we're going to focus on, North America, South America, which is why Trump is starting up the whole conversation about Greenland again. And just annexing it this time. But it's very obvious we're going to control this part of the globe, and it's very obvious Russia's probably going to get Europe, China's going to get the rest, and that's going to be the new game. great power politics is back, which as someone with a degree in international relations makes me happy because I do enjoy a great power politic. I don't enjoy the bombings. I don't enjoy living through the chaos of it, but I do love reading about it. And it is interesting after decades of not having a lot of great power politics, we're now back to great power politics. Everything ends up back at the median. But anyway, speaking of great power politics, I want to talk about this interview at CBS because people don't understand that there's Zionism and Judaism, and those two things are not the same. Every Jew is not a Zionist, and every Zionist is not a Jew. People don't talk about that, but then I grew up evangelical. Every Zionist is not a Jew. And so when I found this clip a few days ago, I was really kind of excited because there are anti-Zionist Jews. I had one on the show forever ago. It's way back in the archives. I might have to go dig it up. But we had a very interesting long conversation about this. But I wanted to show this because it didn't. This was not supposed, as the story goes from this guy. The CBS did not a film that did not air this interview, and I wanted to look at it anyway. It doesn't seem like it's AI, so let's listen.
Unlike the Zionist accusations that he's anti-Semitic, no, he's clear in his differentiation between Judaism, the Jewish people, which he supports, respects, and will protect, God help, and his opposition to the insidious, ersatz Judaism called Zionism, that's unacceptable according to Judaism, that kills, that's a deplorable what's doing to the genocide in Palestine and causing anti-Semitism, a divide between Jews and Muslims. He's opposed to that. We as Jews are opposed to that. We congratulate him. We pray that he should be able to accomplish for the people of New York, and as he said, for around the world, it should be a beacon of light, and we should have a free Palestine because of his work. Unlike this.
So, in case you did not hear, New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani was sworn into office on New Year's Day, signed the book in the old City Hall subway station, all this sort of thing, and so there's been already a lot going on. He changed some policies from Eric Adams already, and there's this big concern that he's not going to protect Jews, and Jews are going to be under threat because, he's Muslim and was born in Uganda and all this type of thing. And this rabbi is saying, no, we don't think that. No, we don't believe that. We're not feeling threatened here. I'm not going to get into the Judaism, Zionism, Israel, we've covered that often on this show. I'm not going to rehab it right now. I thought this clip was interesting to highlight the fact not every Jew is a Zionist, not every Zionist is a Jew, but there are anti-Zionist Jews who don't like what's going on any better than many of the rest of us. And I think it's important to highlight that at every turn, because if you think being against the policies of the government of Israel is being against Jews, I have always said on this show, and I will say it again, I do not like what the government of Israel does. I have no problem with Jewish people. I abhor anti-Semitism in all of its forms. And I'm not interested in anyone who is specifically anti-Jew. And if you want to check me on that, you can go see all the racist anti-Semites that I've written about and I've interviewed and all this sort of thing. I have had rabbis stay in my home. I have been to a Jewish synagogue in my life. I have, one of my best, longest friends is Jewish. Not that that all matters, but my point being is that you cannot like what the government of Israel is doing, which is not all Jewish, by the way. There are Arab members of the Knesset anyway. You cannot like what the government of Israel is doing and still be in support and protection of the Jewish people as a global minority. Those two things are not mutually exclusive, and it's not exclusive for him either. Important thing to mention. Let's move on. Speaking of Jews and whatnot, this Israeli billionaire has decided, I don't know why this video is pausing, because Twitter is dumb. This Israeli billionaire has decided that we need to modify or eliminate the First Amendment in order to protect it. Let's listen. because this gets into how Israel uses news narratives to support its policies. Let's listen.
Also one of the founders of Checkpoint, another big cyber company. Shlomo, it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
How is AI, cyber warfare, shaping geopolitics right now?
So AI is going to revolutionize cyber warfare, is revolutionize cyber warfare from critical infrastructure to the fabric of society and politics, and undermining it, giving unfair advantage to authoritarian governments against democratic countries. First Amendment type of...
That's already happening?
That's already happening. You're seeing the polarization in countries that allow for the First Amendment and protect it, which is great. And I know it's difficult to hear, but it's time to limit the First Amendment in order to protect it, and quickly before it's too late.
What do you mean?
I mean that we need to control the platforms, all the social platforms. We need to stack rank the authenticity of every person that expresses themselves online, and take control over what they are saying based on that ranking.
The government.
The government should
control the social media.
Yeah, should do that. And we need to educate people against lies, and government need to develop cyber defense programs that are as sophisticated as the cyber attack. Today it's a 1 to 100 ratio. And really, government are not doing this today at any rate, and enterprises are left fending from themselves.
The technology is moving much faster than the political system typically can to respond to
so
it.
you need to use technology in order to stabilize the political system, and you need to put adjustments that are perhaps not...
I mean, we're at a point, though...
necessary.
Right,
I don't think anybody needs to guess what I think about that. I'm pretty sure anyone watching this show, now or later, will know what I think about that. Because here's the reality. Once you get... when it comes to private platforms and companies, I do not care. I'm a private platform and company. I choose what goes on CameronJournal.com and at the Cameron Journal. Nothing is said on my platform that I don't love, sort of thing. Private, but when it comes to government regulating it, here's the problem. When you let government do it, eventually someone gets into power you don't like, regardless of your political affiliation. You're going to be on the opposite side of it somewhere along the way. And then you get this situation where government is setting news media and narratives. And as I tell people, we got a taste of it during COVID, and it was an unpleasant pill. When the FBI was going to Twitter, to Facebook, and saying you have to shut down the vaccine denier people, all this type of thing, that was a horrific thing for government to do. And that gets into Matt Taibbi and the whole Twitter files that I covered at length. And pointed out the things that I did think they found and the things that I didn't think were that crazy. The number of FBI requests going out for that was not a good thing. They were trying to pressure social media into censoring this stuff a lot more. Facebook didn't really have a problem and therefore kind of told them to go get stuff. Jack Dorsey and company over at Twitter definitely bent over backwards. Time has shown that a lot of the concerns expressed at the time were incredibly valid. What have we learned from all of this? Government should be nowhere near what people are saying. Shouldn't. Absolutely not. So it's vitally important that we keep government out of that business. Now, when you start introducing this guy who is an Israeli billionaire and is in tech and all this type of thing, this seems rather banal, but the reality of the situation is that when you start using the media, so all this type of thing, people get silenced. I'll get silenced. A lot of us will get silenced. This country is great, not because we do the restrictions like the Germans or the French or the British with the Official Secrets Act, because I can come on here every night at 7 p.m. Eastern and tell you exactly what I think. Me and the guys are with you 4 p.m. on Wednesdays, and we tell you exactly what we think about stuff. in this new regime, we'll either have to comply or give it up. I'm not very good at complying with things, so I guess that doesn't paint a very good rosy picture of my future. This is incredibly dangerous, and it's doubly worse when it comes from essentially a foreign billionaire who's kind of like, the real problem with your country, you got too much free speech going on. This probably won't be as big a narrative as I think it should be. Um, you know, and in this part of the clip, he's even gone into how, China is controlling this stuff and all that. Yeah, let's even just look at this for a second. I'll turn the audio
One of
back
the
on.
founders of Checkpoint, another big.
Are not doing this today at any rate. They're fighting, and you have to control that. And you see that already happening across the world. So this is an urgent need by the government to do that. And until then, enterprises are buying by themselves more and more cybersecurity solutions.
Yeah, this is, yeah. There's a lot of people who, this won't be a huge story as big as it should be, but you may see it around. I wanted to highlight it at least. It's not good. It's not good, and especially considering who it's coming from, makes it worse. We're not gonna get to everything tonight unless I go over, but we'll see what we do. We can skip this. This story is very important. I'm already working on my big 2026 trends report that I usually do on LinkedIn. Also gets posted to the Cameron Journal. And this story from Business Insider caught my eye almost immediately. And it says a jobless boom is shaping up to be the story of the 2026 economy. Says here, the U.S. economy looks strong, but job growth remains slow, creating a jobless boom. We lived through this after 2008. AI investment in consumer spending drove GDP gains even as layoffs and hiring freezes persist. Unemployment is at the highest rate since 2021 as job seekers face a tough market and dwindling sentiment. The U.S. economy continues to surprise on the upside except when it comes to jobs. Hot growth, seen in this week's GDP report, typically corresponds to stronger hiring and personal earnings, which then enable consumers to continue spending. However, this year, the trend has been the opposite. Spending is driving the economy, but the job market is stuck in a great freeze. So much for the great resignation. We're now to the great freeze. As KPMG's chief economist Diane Swank wrote on Tuesday, growth and labor market outcomes have decoupled. It's shaping up to be the story of 2026. The U.S. has found itself in what some are calling a jobless boom. Money is flowing in and out of the economy at a healthy clip, but it's not going towards creating a new job for you. Instead, all eyes are on artificial intelligence investment, which drove much of the year's economic growth, along with still strong consumer spending. The big AI investors were large companies, including those that have led white-collar job cuts. In some cases, their profits have skyrocketed, and do more with less has been the mantra of the year. Firms are doing more with fewer workers, Swank wrote. Many overshot on staffing during the hiring frenzy and are now using attrition or layoffs to bring staffing levels more in line with demand. Others are offsetting the squeeze on profit margins due to tariffs with layoffs and hiring freezes. Economists are still grappling with how the U.S. ended up in this rare scenario. This year, although overall layoffs have crept up, they remain relatively low. Corporate America and big tech were the exceptions, with companies such as Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, Google, and Tesla announcing big cuts. Business Insider has heard from dozens of white-collar job seekers who said that finding a new role has felt impossible, and those with jobs have in many cases held onto them for dear life. In addition to a tough job market, consumers had no income growth last quarter. However, spending held strong despite tariff uncertainty and stubborn inflation still above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. A large percentage of this spending uptick was in healthcare and medical services as costs for hospital and nursing services climbed. This year marks the most Americans have spent on healthcare services since 2022, when the Omicron wave of COVID-19 spread. This suggests that despite strong spending by affluent households, much on this rising consumer spending wasn't necessarily powered by confidence. In fact, consumer sentiment levels are among the lowest they've ever been. And many Americans have been cautious about spending because of tariff uncertainty. The tough job market isn't helping. Unemployment is at 4.6%, the highest since 2021. Total job growth has stayed low. Dozens of job seekers across generations told Business Insider this year that they were frustrated about suspected ageism, cumbersome hiring processes, competition with hundreds of others for a single role, and the suspected role of AI in screening out their applications. Some told reporters they've applied for thousands of roles with no interviews, while others took it well over a year to get a single offer, often at a lower pay than their previous job. And then it gets into AI payoff at the end. But I'm going to save this and talk more about it in my Trends newsletter, because this kind of happened after 2008 through 09 10, 11 is when they say the economy recovered. The jobs didn't come back in 2013. So I'll go talk about that more in my trends for 2026 thing. But I wanted to highlight that it's probably going to be a tough year in the job market. It'll be interesting to see kind of what that goes up. Oh my goodness, I really want to talk about this, but we have so much other stuff. Let's save that for next week. Oh, this has to do with Indian immigration. Not so good. This one has to do with new elites. This one, this could be interesting for midterms. Let's talk about this for a minute. So, we was just running a Charles Haywood post. As Bertrand de Jovenel said, all revolutions result in the rocket-like ascent of new men. And Labrador Skeptic, who I actually love, says here that that what lies ahead, like many of us, including many normies, I think there's a vast upheaval ahead of us that is likely already unstoppable. We can't know what happens next, but I believe a great fracturing is one of the more likely paths. This will result in the rocket-like ascent of new elites. Most of our current leadership class will lose all power and will be replaced by a much harder group of men, each attempting to wield tribal, racial, or regional power. This isn't for certain. Maybe the central battle is not right versus left. Oh, that's basically 19th century American politics. But globalism versus regionalism and nationalism. The New York City DC elites will use everything they have to try to turn the upheaval into increased financial and political power over the rest of the country, benefiting even while everyone else is impoverished. We already know the EU will attempt to also take advantage of the opportunity and stamp out all nationalism. The thing about declining empires, though, is that power almost always moves out from the center. Fracturing and the move to local and regional powers is the natural process. I therefore believe that the single most likely path is that most current elites will have lost almost all power, likely within the decade. That's a lot. The Overton window will shift dramatically. The boomers will be gone. The new leaders will be millennials and Gen Z, with some Gen X as well. And these new generation of leaders will be contesting against each other in a fractured landscape. Hold on to your seats. This could be quite the ride, and it will be coming at us fast. And then someone compares it to a plane crash. Empire centralize as they annex territory, but after the center eventually weakens, other sources of influence in the empire start to accumulate authority. The U.S. empire center is definitely weakening. This is also good. States will become the prototypes for the new system. A successful leader will be it will centralize power in a state with key allies and take power nationally, or the military, because politicized more and steps in. Maybe succession, it can happen. Basically, this is a return to 19th century American politics. Before FDR, well, in the Civil War, Lincoln had to actually request states to send troops to fight the Civil War because the federal government could not have a standing army. And that was dysfunctional and was scrapped in the years afterwards. But I mean, before FDR, power in this country did not tend to focus on the federal national system. What happened at the state level was much more important. That tradition is maintained in the South. Who the governor is far more important than who the president is. It's always been that way. It will be interesting to see, especially given how different regions of the country are handling things. We saw this during COVID with the regional compacts when Trump wasn't really doing anything in 2020. The states kind of banded together and figured it out on their own. And I'm kind of like, regionalism. And I said at the time, regionalism. And when I saw this, I was kind of like, that's probably a quite likely scenario, especially, at the state and local level, as things get fractured, as Washington does less, is seen as chaotic and unuseful. States and regions will band together and do stuff on their own. That will produce new superstars. That will produce new people with vast amounts of political power. He is absolutely right. There'll be millennials. There'll be Gen Z with Gen X for spice. The federal government will probably be marginalized at a certain level, and incidentally, a lot of the Republican Party would like that to be the case. So to some degree, the 50, 60, 70 at this point year project of trying to shrink the federal government will probably be successful. How long we'll all continue to stay within the federal system remains to be seen. Yes, this this I loved in that same theme. Um, Capital in the 22nd century. Piketty was wrong about the past. He's probably right about the future. In 2013, Capital in the 21st Century, the socialist economist Thomas Piketty argued that absent strong redistribution, economic inequality tends to increase indefinitely through the generations, at least until shocks like large wars or prodigal sons reset the clock. This is because the rich tend to save more than the poor. Um, and it says, and the article is really great, and this post was classic because it said depressing but realistic assessment of the future. This article by Trammell and Duarkesh should be compulsory reading for anyone concerned about wealth accumulation, inequalities, and how capital will likely interact with labor. It accords with my view that we are entering a world of rapidly declining returns on humans and exponential returns on digital and intangible capital. In my books, I described it as the recipe for wealth and inequality gravitating towards one, or in other words, it's the easiest time ever to become a billionaire or sink into poverty, at least relatively. That's Victor Schvetz. Yeah, I mean, and which goes into this whole things are changing, new elites, new power centers, power shifting and changing out west to the Sun Belt, away from the Northeast, Upper Midwest. If you're the Democratic National Committee, that should be very concerning for you. Um, and uh, um, and this idea that the return on humans and labor is just not that great, and it's going to be digital, it's going to be AI, all this type of thing is probably very true. Remember, Piketty always said in the 21st century, wealth derived from assets will always have more value than wealth derived from labor. I.e., if you get your money to spend from assets, you will have a much better 21st century than if you get it from labor by working a job. We're already seeing the beginnings of that with AI. Remember the Jobless boom article that we just referenced? All of this has a story. It paints a story. That this is kind of another pile on to that. And I entirely agree. I would definitely recommend go read the Trammell and Duarkesh article, Capital in the 22nd Century. It is, yeah. The 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 future for those that don't have assets is going to be very, very difficult. And that's why I think it is the easiest time ever to become a billionaire or sink into poverty. Whoever is able to take the most, this is kind of the end of the Soviet Union. Whoever can take advantage of opportunities now, whoever can own digital real estate now, whoever is going to be using AI, owning AI, all this type of thing now, is going to have a tremendous amount of power and money moving forward. Everybody who's left behind, which will be most people, is really, really going to struggle. The thing that I don't think people understand about all of this is I don't think regular people are going to take this lying down. Eventually, they just get out the pitchforks and kill you. And so my advice to everybody, would be remember the pitchforks. They will eventually come for you. But it gets into this whole, what's jobs, what's work. Where I had Stephen Fair on the show 2.5 years ago now. And he said, yeah, employment will be a thing of the past by the end of the decade. And at the time I thought he was crazy. And now he seems prophetic, almost. Which should be concerning for everyone. Oh, this is the Mom Donnie about frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. I won't read it, just
long
listen.
These communities have existed as distinct from one another. We will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. If our campaign demonstrated that the people of New York yearn for solidarity, then let this government foster it. Because no matter what you eat, how you pray, or where you come from, the words that most define us are the two we all share: New Yorkers. Long these communities have existed.
When I first saw this last week after his swearing in on January 1st, I thought I was immediately reminded of my new political theory, individual collectivism. And if you want to hear me talk more about that, with Wade Franson and others, head on over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Cameron Journal, and the playlist Watch Cameron's on the front page. And there's 3 videos on individual collectivism. One of these days I'm gonna write the book about it, but I just had a new book out. If you want to go read it, but I'll write it eventually. My immediate thought was, we need both. We need some rugged individualism. We need some warmth of collectivism. That was kind of what made the mid-20th century work. There was enough collectivism to enable you to do well, and enough individualism you could still stand out. My theory of individual collectivism states that that's what should be fostered. If the individual collectivism is the collective should enable individuals to do well, so that by individuals doing well, the whole collective it does better, and vice versa. If we help people do well, people do better, society benefits. I think that's kind of what he's pushing for. And I think given what's happening with AI, technology, employment, all this sort of thing, as much as people don't like this and are calling it communism, the first comment is like, didn't Karl Marx believe in collectivism as one hallmark of communism? As much as people think it's communism, the reality is Social Security is collectivism. So's Medicare. We have lots of collectivism in this country. It just happens to be for old people. And if you want to hear about that, you can go watch my last show from the 22nd, where I talk about total boomer luxury communism. Which that video has done very well. We need both for the thriving of actual people. Now, this is not endorsing Mamdani or his policies. This is not endorsing what he's going to do. He's been in office 4 days. Not saying he's going to be great. He could be a disaster. But conceptually speaking, we do need both. We need a little bit of both. We've gone to one and too far to one extreme. And we need to bring it back to the center, especially given with what's happening with AI. Anyway, this clip's been going around. You're going to see it. Wanted to highlight it. Oh yeah, this is the VP foreign policy thing gets into Venezuela. I am going to talk about this, and I'm probably going to stop here because as much as all of this other stuff is interesting, we'll save it for the newsletter. So this guy is Park McDougald, and he is with Tablet Mag, and the very interesting article is from the New York Times, and it is about J.D. Vance's foreign policy, and he says here, very interesting article, among other things suggests that Vice VP is effectively running an independent foreign policy shop using subordinates at the Pentagon like Colby. This vertical bounces into the rest of the admin policy apparatus in sometimes unpredictable ways, but it seems to largely have run of the place in Ukraine, stopped only by Trump's periodic interventions due to random factors. This is similar to what we saw earlier this year in the internal admin fights over Mideast policy, though their restrainers lost due to Trump's relationship with Bibi and Israel's ability to unilaterally create new facts on the ground. I'll add a few things, and I agree with these things. A, the pivot to Asia cited to justify forcing a pro-Russian settlement on Kyiv seems largely to be a pretext for a general policy of retreat or restraint in all theaters. The new NSS and the recent Pentagon-China report, both products of the restrainer faction, are in fact quite dovish on China compared to Trump 1 and even Biden. This fits with idea, largely unstated in public, though frequently heard in the DC rumor mill, that the actual policy is to create tripartite spheres of influence, with the U.S. taking the Western Hemisphere while ceding Europe to Russia and Asia to China. The conservative MAGA pro-Israel crowd seems somewhat split on Ukraine-Russia. I think this is a mistake. The same faction that wanted to effectively revive the CPOA with Iran, see Witkoff's Gafon enrichment for instance, is now running the same playbook with Russia. Results likely to be similarly poor. Obama-Biden, Iran detente, October 7th. See, domestically, the pro-Russia faction is effectively identical to the conspirated anti-Semitic faction and pushes the exact same ideological memes, neocons, warmongers, though the same messaging verticals Tucker, Bannon, Malik, Postkirk, TP, USA. Unsurprisingly, this messaging tends to align not only with not only Russian, also Chinese, Iranian, Qatari interests. Unsurprising because 1, these countries are all aligned with one another, and 2, the governing logic domestically is to use foreign adversaries as allies against domestic enemies. Russia and Iran don't exist in reality. They are neocon phantasms, and thus we must align with them to crush the neocons. This is all pretty explicit with Tucker. Yeah, the master article is the coming tripolar world order from the Dispatch. There's I'm trying to, no, that's Barry Weiss. We'll talk about her later. I think, I was hoping I had, no, I thought I had another article about that. I don't. Which is okay. But yeah, that coming tripartite world order, as I said, that's gonna be a thing, and it's coming. And like I said, I have a big article out about it tomorrow morning, which is gonna be really, really cool, and get into what the future of foreign policy is going to be in this country, which is very interesting. Some of these we'll discuss in the newsletter. The jobless boom we'll discuss in a separate thing. This I'll save for next week. We'll talk about Barry Weiss and her situation at CBS in the newsletter. We'll probably talk about immigration in the newsletter. This one was the 2025 news cycle in one chart. This is actually really cool. So it actually shows search interest in what got people excited. I think Labubu wins. So does inflation. So does K-pop Demon Hunters. Most of the rest of these are fairly short-lived. It's a visual representation of how short the news cycle is now, in terms of people's interest. Real ID, Golden Dome, ICE has a couple Index to 100. East Wing. This is an excellent representation of how short the news cycle is. But when something sticks, like inflation, steady, Bezos, Labubu, Real ID, it's interesting what sticks. Gaza had some staying power. Elon Musk obviously was more important at the beginning of the year and kind of petered out, sort of thing. Look for a big spike on Greenland, sort of thing. But some of these are days, if that. One week about days. But it's interesting also to see the ones that do survive. Sydney Sweeney survived all year. Inflation survived all year. So did K-pop Demon Hunters. Everything else, even including big things that we thought would really matter, don't. And that's why I always tell people, don't make predictions about the midterms any sooner than about 6 months out. Because I guarantee you that in this review, if I talked to 10 people in the road and said, how many of these things do you remember at all? I guarantee they might be able to name one or two. Even the whole Charlie Kirk, Jimmy Kimmel thing lasted 10 days, the whole thing, beginning to end. The controversy about Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl, all that time. And like I said, and that's why I say, don't make predictions long term. People are forgetful. People learn to let stuff go. That's immigration. That's mass privatization. A lot of this I'm going to discuss in the newsletter, or we'll save it for next week. Anyway, don't sit here and watch me do production in front of you. How tacky, Cameron. That's the news this week. It's Venezuela. It's Maduro. It's solar. AI is. Welcome to 2026, everyone. This is what we're doing here, but don't worry. I'll be here every Monday at 7 to help you through it. I might have a breakdown in the meantime, but we'll be here. In any case, I'm going to put that away. My name is Cameron Cowan. This is the Cameron Journal Newshour. Thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Catch me online at Cameron Cowan on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, at Cameron Journal on TikTok. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube or Twitch. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter, CameronJournal.com/newsletter. If you want to join Cameron Journal Plus, CameronJournal.com/subscribe. Check out my book, America's Lost Generation. You can buy it from me. You can buy it from Amazon. But I make more money if you buy it from me. And I will see you Wednesday for The Living Joke. And I will see you next Monday at 7 p.m. for the Cameron Journal NewsHour. Thank you so much. I don't believe we have an interview this week because I haven't edited them yet. So give me a minute. I do have some great interviews coming up, but there will be interviews coming up. I'm in the middle of training a new video editor, so we're gonna get with that, and we're gonna go from there. So hang tight on the podcast front, because I think, yeah, the last batch ended. The last interview actually was a really great one. It was a lady who wrote a book about kidnapping billionaires and giving them mushrooms to cure them of wanting to be billionaires, which aired on the 29th, which I thought was a little fun. And her book's just out. So make sure to go check that out on the YouTube channel. And yeah, I'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal Newshour, and I'll see you Wednesday for The Living Joke. Talk soon, everyone. Good night.